Colleagues, is the scheduled time, and we have already formed a quorum. Today we have arranged for two sessions to discuss the items from the last meeting, and after the first session we'll take a break of 10 minutes, and then the second session will start at 5:10. I'd just like to remind members that if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest involved in the subjects under discussion today, then in accordance with Rule 83A, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. I'd also like to draw members' attention to Rule 84 with regard to voting where there is a direct pecuniary interest. At the FC meeting last week, I indicated that at today's meeting, after Mr. KK Fong, Dr. Fernando Cheung, Mr. Gary Fan, and Mr. Leung Kwok Hong have spoken on the item under discussion, I will start to deal with procedures 37A of the Finance Committee procedures in dealing with the motions relating to FCR 31A to 34A. I've also informed members that with regard to FCR bracket 2014 to 15 bracket close bracket 31A to 34A, if you have any members to move, then before the 24th of November, Monday 5 p.m., you will have to give a notice in writing to the Secretariat as to what motions you would like to move. The reason why I'd like to move this, that's because I'd like to ensure that there would be reasonable and proper handling of the discussion, so that the meeting time can be used more efficiently, so that the meeting would not be prolonged excessively to the extent that this committee will not be able to discharge its duties efficiency. And by this afternoon, I'm aware that with regard to the item, the Pan-Democrats will be moving more than 500 motions under 37A, and then you will also be asking us to vote separately on the four papers. I'd like to say that in the light of the latest developments and also the request made by the 23 Pan-Democratic members to me, in order to achieve the objective that I stated, I've decided not to enforce the directions that I made last week. I'd like to emphasize that I always respect members' right to ask questions and express your views, and also through your cooperation, I hope that the committee would be able to discharge our duties more effectively and efficiently. And without introducing the officials attending today, because I've introduced them time and again during the past few weeks, so I'll be inviting the four members who have not yet spoken: KK Fong, Fernando Cheung, Gary Fan, and then Leung Kwok Hong. I believe that everybody will have 2 minutes. Yes, Dr. Kenneth Chen. Point of order. Yes, a point of order. Chairman, you said that you're not going to enforce or implement or execute what you said last week, and that's the decision that you took last week. That is members will no longer be allowed to ask questions. So for those who were lining up, if you're not going to ask them to speak at all, then would that be contradictory? Because last week I was also in a queue, and I also wrote to you saying that the two rulings that you had made last week were wrong. And of course, today it's good that you are prepared to right the wrong. I hope that you would again allow members to queue up and ask questions, so that for questions in relation to the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator can be asked in order to resolve the problem. Yes, Dr. Kenneth Chen, I've already given a very detailed reply to your letter. I don't want to waste the time of this committee in dealing with what I've already told you in my reply. I would also not like to repeat what I've just said with regard to what I just read out. And after I've read out the reply, there is no need for me to implement or execute the decision that I took last week. So I still have 4 members who are waiting to speak. So even if so there are 4 members in the queue anyway. As to other members who would like to speak, I will not be saying that as there is no need for me to enforce what I said last week. So I would not be stopping any members from asking questions, but then I would also like to invite you to speak to your party members. You would understand that during the last week or so, in fact, on one occasion during the past week, I've also talked to you in private about this. Yes, Dr. Kenneth Chan. So are you going to ask questions? So with regard to 37A, all right, you drew a line in the afternoon of Monday, but then if you look at 37A, it says that there is no need to give any notice. So is it that I will be allowed to ask questions or move motions right away? Well, Dr. Kenneth Chan, I'm not going to discuss with you what I said in the letter. You should understand what I mean in the letter, and you should understand what I said. All right, under 37A, if you would like to move an motion, then all you need to do is to move the motion. Yes, Mr. Raymond Chan, you said that for the 23 members of the Pan-Democratic camp, they already promised that they would be moving some 500 motions under 37A. So according to my understanding, apparently, given the fact that they have already submitted them, so does that mean that there will be no more than that? So how about the remaining 15 members? Does that mean that they can always change or alter the questions that they have already submitted? All right, last week I made a decision and I said now that there is no need for me to enforce it, and therefore members will be free to move any motions under 37A. But then I'd just like to remind you that as chairman of the Finance Committee, at any one time I have to assess the situation to determine whether or not the meeting is progressing in an orderly and efficient manner. And therefore, even if I stop any member from submitting any further motions, and if I believe that that number would be beyond the ability of this committee to deal with that, because that might render this committee inefficient and disordered, then I will have to make a ruling. I hope that we can all cooperate, because as I've been saying that this is something that we should be doing, but then we should not be paralyzing the proceeding of the committee. I do not want the public to have an impression that we are indecisive. We are not doing our job at all. All right, I've not been able to say that. I believe that KK Chiang, Fernando Cheung, Gary Fan, and Leung Kwok Hong have spoken for more than 4 times, and therefore 2 minutes each. KK Fong, I'd like to ask the administration, that is in Chiang Kuan-o waterfront, in the middle of this month, there were about 2 kilometers long of red tide, and according to some environmental experts, they said that probably that's because of the leakage in the landfill. That's why we have some organic discharge, which might have caused the red tide. And the second situation is, as you might recall, last year in the NT Northeast landfill, there were also leakage resulting in some stream water being contaminated. Well, they did not admit it initially, but then some contractors also subsequently admitted that there might have been some runoff. So I'd like to know that, well, you said that for the bedding system or the system to prevent any leakage, all right, that would cost some $300 million. So how are you going to ensure that there would indeed not be any leakage? Thank you. With regard to the NT Northeast leakage, in fact, in this case, there is no leakage at all. And then with regard to the red tide, in fact, that happens across the territory. And the second question by Mr. KK Fong is about NT Northeast landfills leakage. In fact, we already explained that had nothing to do with the leachate system underground that was leaking. In fact, that was caused by a temporary tanks leakage, and we already dealt with that, and subsequently we also got water sample from the Nala nearby, and it was proven that it had nothing to do with the landfill. In other words, there was a report in 2005, and Lohas had not yet had any population intake, and there were only about 0.3 million population, and now there's already 0.5, an increase by some 40,000. So are you sure that there would not be any problem? Yes, Dr. Chen. In fact, when we did the EIA for the NT Northeast expansion, in fact, Lohas was already included in the scope of a study, so that was one of the 43 sensitive receivers. So we already expected there to have population. Next, Dr. Fernando Jiang, 2 minutes. Chairman, once again, I'd like to make it clear that is with regard to your ruling, whether it's under 37A and also drawing a line for members to ask questions. I do question that, but then since you have decided not to enforce it, I'm not going to question it any further. Now, coming back to the paper, last time I said about the measurement of PM 2.5 and also the location where the measurement is taken. Concerning the pollutants, when it's suspended particulates, very often it comes from the dump trucks. We're talking about over 1,000 such trips, and it would affect not just the passers-by and also the residents living in the lower floors, i.e. those are living below PMD 25 meters. But then at Tai Chek Sha, you are measuring that on a rooftop some 25 meters above ground, and you measure the air quality there. In fact, this is a trick that you played because you will not be able to take an accurate measurement as to the roadside pollutants. In fact, you should have made use of roadside monitoring devices that should have been below 10 meters from the ground level. So why is it that you're not making use of roadside monitors instead you're relying on rooftop monitors, and you claim that that's not a problem at all? In fact, last time we already explained for PM 2.5 is a very small particulate. That's why usually we're talking about dust created by dump trucks and also construction sites. We call that dust or flying dust. That's why in Tai Chek Sha, when we measure that, well, you said that you would not be able to measure the emission or the exhaust from dump trucks and so on. Well, usually we have two types of devices. In fact, we also have 12 such air quality monitoring stations, and they would also do a very detailed calculation, and that would also include PM 2.5. Next, Gary Fan. You're asking for the 18th time already. All right, Bureau Director, I'm seriously asking this. So will you or your administration reconsider withdrawing this funding request for Tseung Kwan O landfill, because over the past 10 years or so, you have not been able to reduce waste at source. You have not done your job, and as a result, for a very long time, you have to rely on the end source processing. That's why you will have to expand the landfills. And for the Tseung Kwan O landfill, it's not just because of the dump trucks or the RCV and also the air quality problem. It's also a planning mismatch, and also you're talking about a major residential development, and just next to it you have a landfill, and you're expanding it time and again, and you have no way to stop it at all. So with regard to the producer responsibility system, whether it's about tires, drinks, and so on, you have not done anything at all. No progress has been made. And also for the new charging system, you have no idea as to when it can be implemented. You have no timetable at all. So on the whole, how are you going to deal with it? Will you be withdrawing this proposal for the anti-Southeast Tseung Kwan O landfill funding application? Bureau Director, concerning this issue, we have repeatedly reiterated. That is, we have an overall blueprint, we have a roadmap, and also the timetable for waste charging, and also the producer responsibility system. We have timetables for all these initiatives that will be done in an orderly manner, and we will be doing that as expeditiously as possible. And also concerning the past recycling efforts, have we done our job? Well, we have to look at the figures. All right, some 40%, we have a 40% recycling rate, and that's very close to the UK. And also, when we talk to the stakeholders with regard to the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator is a common commitment philosophy. And Tseung Kwan O, we have already done our job, and therefore there is no question of us withdrawing any one of these proposals. Thank you. Next, Kenneth Chan, asking for the 6th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, what I'd like to say is I'd like to tell Mr. Wong Kam Sing, the Bureau Director, that is, if you look at the overall planning for incinerators, well, your judgment is not the most scientific one, and also as far as the environment is concerned, it's not the safest approach. Well, you'd rather go to Shek Koo island, you spend more time and you're spending more money, and you're actually sacrificing some 31 hectares of marine ecology, and you'd like to compensate the fishermen, and yet you're not prepared to go for a better destination, spending less time, spending less money, and then you would also be causing less damage to the environment, so as to deal with this terminal device or facility. And we are not really debating about the producer responsibility and also the waste reduction and so on. From Dr. Sarah Liao's era, you've been doing very patchy work about this. And your boss, that is C.Y. Leung, Mr. 689, when he said that he'd like to get more support by protecting the environment, he said that the incinerator should be the last resort. Now you are trying to go for the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. How can the public accept it? How can the green groups accept it? And for me personally, I think your judgment, you've been saying that you're very objective and scientific. I think in the end, you're just trying to avoid the vested interest, and you're so afraid of the villagers. You've been very nice to them, and you're offering a lot of compensation to the fishermen. But what about other stakeholders? So for such important subjects, you have not been doing your job, and therefore you should not have become the bureau director. Why don't you just be the director for the incinerator and landfills? So for such controversial subjects, and you've been working closely with the chairman, and you're trying to deny us of our right to ask questions and also move motions. I think this is really ridiculous. There is no standard at all. There is no quality of debate, and you're trying to frame and smear this council. And this is what you've been doing as the bureau director. This is really shameful on you. Next, Albert Chan, 12th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, I've not been able to ask the 3 landfills. I've been talking about the incinerator, and if I had been given 12 chances to ask questions about the incinerator, I should have 36 times for asking questions on the 3 landfills. And of course, I know the anti-southwest northwest more. That's why I'll be focusing on that. And of course, it has to do with Hong Kong's environmental policy and also the main statement. And there are 16 main statements which have been misleading, or which might have been deliberately misleading people into believing anything. So that's supposed to be a policy statement on the part of the administration on certain proposals. And if there's a judicial review, and if it's proven that the administration has deliberately misled the public, then that would also constitute a ground for overturning the decision, because some of those remarks have been made in this council. And as you might remember, about 2 weeks ago, there was a judicial review case involving the TPP, and the court overturned a decision taken by the TPP, because at the time, the applicant submitted information to the TPP members, and the judge was of the view that TPP members did not give enough time to understand the details.
And therefore, the decision was unreasonable. Many of us have no knowledge about the landfills and the incinerator. So they press the button to support it is being unreasonable. Mr. Chen Chi-chun. Well, we should be given sufficient time to ask questions. If we're not allowed to ask questions, now, for those we asked last week, we only received the replies yesterday, and we do have the right to ask follow-up questions if we are not satisfied. And therefore, the chairman should first stop the administration from answering our questions. That is, even if we pursue further, there won't be any further answers from the administration. When we discussed Northeast NT project, I used the same argument. The chairman was Leung Sheng. There were points in the paper that were not really clear, so the High Court has accepted Mr. Wong Yok Men's judicial review application. So you have to be careful, Chairman. make sure that your decision is not unreasonable. Talk about the paper received yesterday. I asked about reduction in construction waste, and the reply was there was a reduction of 80%, and the government did even better than the private sector. So I asked for further questions. And para 4, our answer to question 4. I don't have the figures. I asked for the years and also the reduction and how it was reduced to 80% and how the administration has done better than the private sector. The administration just gave me a host of arguments without the statistics. So thank you for allowing me to ask this question. Mr. Chen. In the early days of 2000, 10,000 tons of construction waste were dumped at landfill, and then it fell to 6,000. And after the charging scheme was introduced, it's about 3,600 tons per day. So the reduction is substantial enough to prove that the charges were effective, and the administration is now reviewing the level of charges. Can you wait for your next round, Dr. Kwok Kai-ki? The 10th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, regrettably, this is almost the last chance for us to engage the administration in a dialogue. As at last week, the administration told us how it had communicated with the residents, but all those were lies. The administration or the secretary has never met the affected residents face to face. Later on, we're going to table motions under 37A to seek redress for residents. We have to help them to address the various issues associated with the landfills. The administration asked the FC, of course, given the current political situation, the government can do whatever it likes with the support of the pro-establishment camp, even to pass unpopular policies. Recently, we've been talking about how we can reduce the impacts of the landfills and incinerator. Because the government is doing such a bad job in recycling and recovery, then regardless of the number of landfills we have, it will be useless. The government has never shown its commitment to the community. Of course, on table we have municipal waste charging scheme and also facilities to deal with food waste. But let me warn you once again, Secretary, you can bulldoze through your papers, but if you do not honor your undertaking, then there will be a lot of grievances in the community, and these policies are very bad. Mr. Albert Chen, as Mr. Chen Chi-cheng said, papers were only given to us yesterday using the ruling of the Town Planning Board review as an example. I think the same reason is still valid. The paper came in so late yesterday, many of us didn't have the chance to read it or digest it. All right, I'd like to ask about conflict of interest. Those who know, who are familiar with the subject, know that an organization very close to the Israelite government and who has also taken up incineration projects in Waijiao is going to get this project. And Civic Miss Christine Lowe's think tank in her acknowledgement list earlier on had the name of that company. Now, I don't know whether it is 689 or not. We are concerned about the conflict of interest. And yet, under the leadership of this Undersecretary, we are going to promote the incinerator scheme judicial review is underway, and the CFA is going to make a ruling, and yet the government is pushing through this project even before the ruling is available. Perhaps there is a possible conflict of interest here, and we will consider reporting formally to the ICAC to see whether anybody has hidden anything in his declaration of interest. I'll see whether the Secretary has the opportunity to reply. All right, Secretary, in the next round, in Mr. Chen's next round, you can reply. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, the 12th round, 2 minutes. Thank you. I was asking about the government's production of construction waste. According the administration's reply was about a changes since the introduction of charging scheme, how from 10,000 to 6,000, but it is not really an 80% reduction claimed by the Secretary last time. I asked you for a breakdown and you didn't provide it in the paper properly from 10,000 tons to 3,600 tons. This is not really 80%, Mr. Chen. Perhaps Mr. Chen did not hear the Secretary clearly last time. The Secretary was saying that in Hong Kong, the over 90% of the construction waste generated in Hong Kong had been recycled in as a public fill, and the rest would go to landfills. Public works projects are using the majority of such public fill because there are codes within the government that there should be reduction of waste at source at construction site. Recycling should start at the relevant construction site. And if that fails, then the waste will be used as public fill for recycling, and only those who cannot be recycled will be dumped at landfills. And the percentage is over 90%. Mr. Chen Chi-chun. And this reply contains measures to reduce construction waste being done by the government. Speakers off mic. Can you give a reply quickly, Mr. Chen? Yes, the administration is encouraging private construction sites to do the same. Otherwise, over 90% of our construction waste will find its way to our landfills. Mr. Albert Chen. Mr. Au, allow me to go first. Speakers off mic. Chairman, we have started calling tenders. So you can't say who is going to get the contract. I'm talking about the conflict of interest. Please don't allow the assistant to answer. Secretary, are you aware of this conflict of interest on the part of Ms. Christine Low? Mr. Albert Chen, it's hard for me to order a particular official to answer. I believe he is responsible for the tendering exercise. And before tenders are called, of course, it is not possible for the Undersecretary, Ms. Christino, to have this conflict of interest. You're so smart, Chairman. May I rephrase my question? Is the Secretary aware that in 2011, Ms. Christino's company had this conflict of interest with this company known for constructing incinerators? But then they have not yet called tenders. How has that got anything to do with the motions we have? Well, we don't want Christine Low to become another Paul Chan, because very often it can be deferred rewards. That's the same for the $50 million pocketed by C.Y. Leung, knowing full well that he was going to run for the CE position, and he was given that so-called golden handshake. Speakers off mic. Please switch on Mr. Chan's mic. I can only answer from the perspective of our system. It is our procedure to set up a tender vetting committee with representatives from all relevant departments. The vetting committee is fully responsible for the tendering procedures, and a report will be submitted to the Central Tendering Committee. The Secretary and Undersecretary are not involved in tender vetting. Mr. KK Phil, the 18th round, 2 minutes. You know, for Wan Po Road, every day the street is washed 22 times. I think that could be included in the in a Guinness Book of Records. That means that there is a great demand to clean up the streets. Otherwise, it won't be so frequent. The administration gave money to turn the refuse collection vehicles so that they have covers. They have metal tailgate. So I'd like to know, how has that helped to improve the cleanliness of Wan Po Road? Thank you. Regarding this subsidy scheme for replacement of refuse collection vehicles, now we have already got the funding, and the relevant legislation will be effective next April. Vehicles without such a device will be banned from entering our landfills. We have less than 100 vehicles yet to be installed, and all others have been installed with the device. That is over 95%. 10 vehicles have not come for a subsidy because they're going to scrap these vehicles under another subsidy scheme, or they are not involved in refuse recycling. Mr. KK Fong, whether somebody along the road to check whether they can achieve your desired effects, we do. Mr. Albert Chen, 2 minutes. I beg your pardon. I have not taken. I have not taken lunch. I am having biscuits. Do I need to give you another 4 seconds? No, thank you, Secretariat, for providing refreshments. Yes, I understand the tendering process, but sometimes you don't have to be a member of the committee in order that interest can be transferred. It is for the Bureau to decide the specifications of the incinerator. So you've done all the groundwork, and the benefits will be reaped by another body. So if the specifications are tailor-made to suit a particular tenderer, then the chance of its getting the contract will be much higher. That's why with only a few major green companies in Hong Kong getting the consultancy contracts, well, all such contracts are awarded to this handful of large companies because the tendering conditions favor them. For instance, companies have been warned by certain companies cannot enter a bid. Then this company will immediately be screened out because it has been formally warned by the Environmental Protection Ministry of the mainland. But you're not going to do that because competitors are saying that the design of the incinerator is tailor-made to favor that particular company. Its competitors have explained to me they very much like to meet with legislators, but some of us here would ignore their petition. Does any member wish to speak? If there is none, then I will now deal with Mr. KK Fo. You intend to speak? I want to ask questions. Can you please press the button? I did. Okay, Mr. KK Fo, the 19th round, 2 minutes. Thank you. For refuse collection vehicles, they have introduced improvements, and it's the government's intention to transport construction waste to Zhang Guan O that will lessen the burden on our roads. If that is really done, will the administration impose restrictions on the use of vehicles to transport waste to the landfill? For instance, after 6 p.m., it will be banned. Thank you. We've explained a number of times regarding Mr. KK Fo's question. Now, only fill materials are transported by sea, but not construction waste. Regarding the opening hours, we can consider closing the landfill earlier or on public holidays. That can be considered in the new contract. The administration said that it has answered a number of times, but let me repeat once again that I'm not a member of the Ye panel, so I won't know, even if you have explained many, many times. Will you undertake to transport construction waste by sea as well? Well, if we want to do that, we have to identify the right barging point in the urban areas where construction waste is produced. That's the arrangement for fill material. Mr. KK Phil, no more questions? Mr. Albert Chen, the 16th round, 2 minutes. In accordance with Rule 39 of the FC procedure, I move a motion to adjourn. Mr. Albert Chen moves an adjournment motion under Rule 39 of the FC procedure. According to Rule 39, members may speak on this motion, but for no more than once, and also shall not make a speech for longer than any time period prescribed by the committee. Because of our time constraint, I will set it at 3 minutes. Will members who wish to speak press the request to speak button? Mr. Albert Chen, 3 minutes. Regarding the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator, and the government's environmental protection policies, have always criticized the government for having a mismatch and a fault in its manpower resources. We are at least a decade behind other countries. I've been saying this since 1990s. Our recycling policy and measures are far behind other parts of the world. In the 1990s, the world was turning from landfilling to incineration, and we did just the opposite back then. I already pointed out that the government's thinking was rather outdated and inappropriate. And the question is, the administration is not sincere. It only talks about charging, which the public is bound to oppose. And the administration thinks that MSW charging will be a major achievement of its term.
If you don't mandate people to recycle the waste, and that's going to be a problem. You're going to spend a lot on the incinerator. What is the mix of the waste? I have quoted examples from Zhuhai, Zhongshan, and I have quoted the emission level of sulfur dioxide and so on. And you haven't been able to give me an answer. Well, they are having a capacity of 3,000 tons as we do, but then you're emitting pollutants at 3 or 4 times higher than there. Well, last time I said red sulfur dioxide as carbon dioxide, but then no government official has been able to point out the mistake I made. For those who know about green issues will not be unfamiliar with the terms, and how come that no one government official has been able to identify my mistake? I was only corrected by my assistant. So this is most amazing. You've got so many government experts here. This is an unforgivable error. I would admit my mistakes, but the government officials are not willing to do that. Second question, tendering. Since the 10 infrastructure projects, well, the government will be looking at the overall manpower resources to map out a plan. But then it seems that the different policy bureaus are trying to grab resources and money. And there is a mismatch driving up costs of infrastructure projects. And then our government funding will be adversely affected. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chen. Thank you, President or Chairman. Mr. Albert Chen's quoted an example of having his mistake not being corrected by government officials. We can tell from this that the government officials from the EMB are not being sincere in giving answers to our questions. Now, yesterday we received this paper, answers to our 4 questions. I mean, they are just choosing or picking the questions that they would like to answer and then fill up the pages just like that. Well, last time we raised many questions like how come that there is a great difference in the cost between the Hong Kong incinerator and the mainland incinerator? No answer. They refused to give an answer. So perhaps, well, if the government doesn't want to answer, then you might as well, Chairman, ask us not to raise questions. Now, Chairman, I think it's appropriate for you to withdraw your rulings, 2 rulings last time, and you didn't shut the gates. And then that would be good for us because when we get our questions answered, then we will stop asking. Now, 37A. The government just gave us a paper yesterday, and after having read the paper, we would perhaps be moving more motions under 37A. And also, we would also like to perhaps raise more motions under 37A after having heard from the government officials. But there has been a sort of agreement that within the 2 members that there will not be more than 500 motions. And then the government seems to be waiting for, say, December to come and then get the proposals passed. Now, if this is the case, why don't you withdraw these funding applications and then sort of push forward or advance forward the items on civil service pay and the LIFA and also the OH allowance increase and so on? Why don't you advance these items forward? You have a gentleman's agreement with the Pan-Democrats, and then you can sort of estimate the number of meetings that you can deal with all these. Then perhaps we can deal first with a CSSA, LIFA, and civil service pay, and OALA first. Well, then that makes everyone happy. Why can't you consider this? Now, the pro-establishment camp, can you cooperate with us and then adjourn the meeting? No. I know we have quite a good idea of when the debates on 3 landfills and 1 incinerator will stop. So then shouldn't we be adjourning the debate now and then proceed the way that I suggested? Dr. Fernando Zhang. Of course, I support Mr. Albert Chan's motion for the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. As we all know, the landfills are the worst options in dealing with waste. We should first do a better job in waste reduction at source, recycling, recovering, and reuse. Well, these are more important work. Waste reduction at source. Well, for the source of waste, much of it is really construction waste and then commercial and industrial waste. Domestic waste. Well, makes up an important part too. For construction waste, we said we recover over 90% of it, 95% in fact, and then 95% is going to the public landfills. Well, it's just like in landfill, but you are just using it as another a term. Well, and ultimately it will be used for reclamation. Well, we say that much of it is inert and can be reused and recycled, but it's basically for reclamation. And because of this, then we are incentivized to do a lot of reclamation, and that would deal a heavier blow to our environment. Now, if we can't use it for reclamation, then we may have to export it because the public food bank may be saturated too, and we have to spend on exporting the construction waste as well. This is something that has to be shouldered by Hong Kong people too. Now, in the transport of such construction waste, there might be pollution, and we have to bear the cost because of that as well. We've spent millions and millions of dollars on white elephant projects, and they have become the source of our pollution. We have to review the situation. Now, regarding recycling rate, you said that that can be increased to 50% over 48% to 55% after 10 years. Now, if you look at the umbrella square, the recycling rate is as high as 90%. Now, I think that the figure of 48% is much inflated. If we are determined to do a good job in recycling, I think there is a lot we can do in terms of the measures that we can take. Now, sorry. Next one, Mr. Feng Fung-Kinki, 3 minutes. I support the motion. Landfills are the worst options. Well, the Secretary has gone with us together with to Korea. In U.S. and Europe, they would rather have the waste incinerated first before it is landfilled, and it's actually the fuel ash which is being landfilled. Now, another very important point is separation of waste at source. Well, it's it's a joke now, because the government departments are doing it separately. Now, there has been a food waste recycling project in housing estate for 3 years. Now, after 3 years, the housing department said that they will not carry on because they don't have the money. And the residents are used to have separating the wet and the dry food waste, so to speak. But now they are reverting back to the old way where these two types are lumped together. So are you determined to do separating the waste source? I think you are backpedaling. Now, third, Dong Chee-hwa said that the St. landfill will be saturated in 2011, Donald Zhang 2013, and C.Y. Leung 2015. And then Wong Kam-shing told us it's 2017. So they are changing the stance all the time. Now, if the St. landfill is going to be saturated by 2015 and the expansion will only be commissioned in 2017, does it mean that between these 2 years, the landfill will be closed off? Now, does it mean then, well, you are saying that this city will be besieged by waste. So I think you are saying things just to scare people, to merely scare people. So I don't believe you're saying that the St. landfill will be saturated by 2015. Mr. Chen Kim-po, 3 minutes. I think the world has changed. A member made a mistake in his remark, and then he was conversely criticizing the government for not pointing out his mistake. Now, I think the government has to get on with what it should do. Well, he made a mistake, and he was pointing his finger at you, and he sounded very upright. Well, the pan-democratic camp is always like that. I mean, they have distorted arguments, and they're repeating these distorted arguments all the time. Now, Mr. Raymond Chen said that the chairman withdrew his 2 rulings last week. You didn't say so. You said that you didn't. It's just that you won't implement the 2 rulings. You didn't say you will withdraw the 2 rulings. Well, I stand to be corrected, Chairman. Second, I strongly oppose adjourning the debate or the meeting. Now, Mr. Raymond Chan sounded very innocent and aggrieved. Wow, all of us know that you are trying to stage a show. Wow, their act is really amazing. So please don't hold up important issues by your act, like civil service pay and benefits for the elderly. Well, I do see a glimmer of hope here. Well, try to resolve it as soon as possible. Don't repeat opinions which you have already said many times. Please respect yourself. Dr. Kenneth Chan, 3 minutes. If you pay close attention to this meeting, Chan Kim-po from the pro-establishment camp said that pro-establishment camp, the members were repeating themselves all the time. Well, you are very correct. And under 37A, well, these are the comments that I would, motions that I would move without advance notice. Chairman, the Green groups have asked the legislators to put pressure on the Environment Bureau because we would like to see recycling, a producer responsibility system, waste reduction at source. All these can be proceeded with a roadmap and a good timetable. While all these are controversial issues, whether it is endpoint treatment and so on. And I support the report compiled by the Council on Sustainable Development on MSW charging. And I was criticized by my supporting that because they said that why didn't the government show the other costs for treating waste? Now, all these are controversial issues, but we've wasted a lot of time on not acting fast enough on MSW charging, recycling, producer responsibility system, and so on. So that's why we ended up with having these proposals of 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. What I'm worried is that the government will not be delivering their promises. Now, in the past, when the atmosphere was more in the FC is more relaxed, we have a mutual trust with the government. But then, in the recent audit of commission report, legislators were criticized for doing a lousy job in approving the Civil Aviation Department's initiative. So that's why we had to be very rigorous and careful in scrutinizing the funding applications. And we should try to strive for some timetable and roadmap for these other initiatives before we can let you go with these 3 landfills and 1 incinerator proposal. I will not be asking any more questions because they are not giving us any answers. I would just use the way of moving motions to tell the public, the administration, what we think. I support Mr. Albert Chan's motion. Mr. Wong Kok-hing, Chairman, I don't need 3 minutes. In newspapers today, there was this advertisement carrying the construction workers' letter to you objecting to the delays in endorsing infrastructure projects because the construction workers' lives may be affected, and there will be an extra cost of $7 billion every year incurred. There should be $43.2 billion, which should be approved this year. Then now it's only $36 billion have been endorsed, and for 27 projects, if there were any further delays, then the cost may rise by $2.3 billion. So I hope that members take a look at this advertisement, this open letter to Tommy Cheung. Well, see, I appreciate the seriousness of the problem. I hope that members can support the chairman's exercising your power to handle the funding applications more effectively. There should be no more delay. You should cut the filibustering in a resolute way. There should not be any stalling. And Mr. Albert Chan is now moving a motion to adjourn the meeting. Well, every meeting of the FC held so far in this legislative session, there have been calls for adjournment of debate. Why doesn't Albert Chan withdraw from the meeting altogether? Mr. Gary Fan, I speak in support of Mr. Albert Chan's motion of adjourning the meeting. What Mr. Wong Kwok-ing said was not true, and the FTU and its members quoted some figures on construction projects. I think the figures are misleading. Now, it's been 17 years since the handover. Every year, public works amounted to $20 billion every year. 11 to 12, 30 billion, 12 to 13, $50 billion. And in the next few years, over $70 billion. So FTU just quoted the figures from on approved projects by the LegCo in the first half of 2014. These remarks are unfair, and they are just misleading. In my office, there were these group of drivers who were cross-border drivers staging a protest, and what they said were exactly the same as what Mr. Wong said. They were just trying to smear us, smear the Pan-Democrats, and well, the Pan-Democrats were just making reasonable demands on the government to reshuffle the agenda items and try to move up the items more to do with our livelihood. And the government refused to do that. And I objected to Mr. Wong Kwok-ing's misleading remarks. Dr. N. Chang. Chairman, I speak objecting the adjournment of meeting because there is so much work yet to be done. Mr. Gary Fan said that he supported Mr. Chan's motion to adjourn the meeting, but at the same time, he said that members of the public are unhappy and that there are a number of items related to people's livelihood that have yet to be endorsed. Well, if you represent members of the public, well, you should go ahead and deal with them. Now, because of this incinerator item, you are delaying and dragging your feet, and you are directly elected members. You have to be accountable to the public. So we should not adjourn our meeting lightly or casually. Mr. Wong Kwok-ing, well, was right in criticizing the members. Well, you are members. You should not take holidays. Now, Chairman,
There's an article in the press, and I think it's very good, and therefore I'm going to read it out so that you can also take a look at it. Earlier on, Fernando Cheung said that we have to reduce waste at source, and if we are not able to do a good job, then there would be a lot of waste. And even if we try to sell that to other countries, they are not going to take it. Well, this year, Sweden, well, the state environmental protection expert confirmed to the press that as there was a shortage of waste within Sweden, that's why it had to import waste from other countries in Europe for the purpose of incineration, so that in the winter months that would be able to supply more heat to Swedish. So for the incinerator, all right, it provides some 20% of the urban or city power, and some 250,000 households are relying on that for power supply. So you can see that the incinerator should be built as soon as possible, because if you're not able to build it, then if you just engage in such talk, then there'll be accumulation of more waste. And KK Fong was right in saying that, all right, you claim that it would be saturated in 2013, and it's already 2014, and still it's not saturated, and it might not be full in 2017. That's why we can delay you further. All right, in 2017, well, even if you try to build the incinerator, it won't be able to be up and running right away. So it will take several years before it can be completed and commissioned. All right, let's take down their names one by one and their political parties. And then they will have to be accountable to the public of Hong Kong. And if indeed there is a day when we are besieged by rubbish, sorry, your time is up. Does any other member wish to speak? If none, yes, Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you, Chairman. It's not your turn yet. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, it's your turn. Well, as all members of the council know, as this council is not accessible by RCV, and therefore we are already besieged by rubbish, I think there are more flies in the building complex, and that's a fact. And if we do not consider the 3 landfills expansion and the 1 incinerator, and if there is if we are besieged by waste in the future, then are we going to have more flies in our households? And for those of us who have been to the overseas duty visit, you would have known that in any country, if you try to reduce waste at source, we need to have the cooperation of the public, and that cannot be achieved overnight. So are we saying that, well, if we are only able to do it 10 years down the road, then we will only have the incinerator 10 years later? So that's nonsense. And today, in the Ming Pao Daily, we have the editorial, and it's very right in the sense that well, the Pan-Democrats are taking the administration to task and is trying to make things difficult for the administration. All right, the Pan-Democrats claim that they would like to have rational discussion with the administration, but then this is just an excuse. In fact, this is all part of the non-cooperation campaign, and under that slogan, in fact, all the reasoning is just to achieve the purpose of dragging the administration's feet down. And I hope that everybody will be able to see that with their own eyes. And at the same time, Pan-Democrats are very concerned about civil service pay rise. What I'd like to say to members is that during the more recent days and weeks, I've been contacting the civil servants, and they know very well that it's the Pan-Democrats who are dragging this down, resulting in a delay in allowing them to have their pay rise. So, too bad. They would not trust you, even if you say that you'd like to do this for them, and they know very well who is making things difficult and why they are not having their pay rise. So please do not take that out again, because these are just your excuses, because you're blocking the roads, and then you try to pretend that you're prepared to open or reopen the road. All right, it's not that easy to pretend to be a good guy, because we all know that you are not. Who would like to ask questions? If not, then administration, yes. Well, in the course of the discussion concerning public works projects by this council on the figures that have been read out, I'd like to clarify and explain a bit about that. Well, just now, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng was looking at the council during its last session with regard to public works commitment. Well, there was a significant drop. That's right. If you look at 2012 and 13, well, for new public works projects, there was some $90 billion, and in 2013-14, and we can see here is $3.6 billion for 2013 and 14. So Mr. Gary Fan was referring to some cash flow figures, but then that's the cash flow. But then for the actual situation, for the projects that have been approved in recent months, Indeed, if you look at the number of projects when compared to the past, it has dropped significantly. And what's the consequence? As I said before, for any delay in approving these projects, that has already resulted in our budget cost increasing by some 2.3 billion, some $23 billion. And if there is any further delay, the cost is likely to go further up. Thank you. Mr. Albert Chan, you have 1 minute. Why is it that the administration is distorting the figures? All right, for this $3.6 billion is just new projects. We have already approved some $11 billion to the HA, and we have already approved projects amounting to some $30 billion. And if you look at the amounts approved by this council for 2012, it's only $3 billion. So every year there is fluctuation. At the peak, it could be 160, and then at the ebb, it could be just $3 billion. So please do not try to deceive people. All right, we've been talking about this problem. All right, and you're saying that we're blocking the incinerator project because during the era of Edward Yao, if you do not do any waste reduction at source, then we'll be blocking your proposal as long as we are here. That's why we have already said that on day one. So this is a matter of principle, because during the past few years we've been emphasizing that if you do not do anything to reduce waste at source, then you're actually wasting public money. All right, why don't you have a referendum on the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator? Then I'll be stopping my filibustering right away if you're willing to do a referendum. Mr. Albert Chan. If you're very angry about this, you can go out to Venturanga, because we have to respect one another here. Okay, I'll be putting the following item to the vote. We will be adjourning the meeting now. So, okay, so we'll have a division, and the bell will ring for 5 minutes.
現在開始表決。
Voting begins.
在我宣布表決結果前，
Before I declare the result, please verify your votes. Voting is closed and the result will be displayed. 12 for, 31 against. I declare the motion is negatived. If no other member would like to speak, we will deal with FCR 2014-15 31A bracket 30. So that's a 37A motion. All right, 10 are being moved by Mr. KK Fong. Okay, it's number 6 motion moved by Mr. KK Fong. We will now put it to the vote. Anybody claiming a division? Mr. KK Fong claims a division and the bell will ring for 5 minutes. Yes, Mr. KK Fong, please explain your motion. Can I read that out? Yes, you can read that out if you want. All right. In accordance with para 37A of the Procedures for the Finance Committee, I'd like to move the following motion in relation to FCR bracket 2014-15 close bracket 31A. That this committee thinks that before the administration can request for an expansion of the NT Southeast landfill, it must clarify on how it's going to monitor air quality, in particular on PM 2.5. The administration should also talk to the local residents as well as the district council on how they can reach an agreement on the method and also the location for such monitoring. Dr. Fernando Cheung, can we be given the order of the motions? Well, as you submit, I'll be letting you know. But then initially, when we arrange for some of these, and as some members are not here, I don't want to do it while they are not here. The first 10 are moved by KK Fong, and then the next 11 by Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, and then one is by Ms. Sito, and then Fernando Cheung, yourself. But now Ms. Sito is not here, and Mr. Leung Kwok Hong is also not here, and therefore the motions moved by Mr. KK Fong. And after we are finished with that, and when I look at the members who are here, all right, next will be Fernando Cheung and then Wu Chi Wai. How many are there? And you have 9. I know how many I have submitted, but I'd like to know the order. You have 7. You have 7. And then Mr. Wu Chi Wai, he has 7, and he's not here either. So if he's not here, then it will be Mr. Raymond Chan's turn, and he has a large number. So Mr. Raymond Chan, as you know, after Mr. KK Fong, if Mr. Leung Kwok Hong does not return, and if Ms. Ho does not return, then it will be Dr. Fernando Cheung's 7. And then if Mr. Wu Chi Wai does not come back, then it will be your turn.
Mr.
Mr. Lee Choi-yen, I have 60. So how many have you submitted, but then how many have been approved by him? I haven't done the counting. Secretariat, how many have been approved? Raymond Chan, you have 60. Under 31A.
胡志偉議員啊，你
Mr. Wu Chi-wai. All right, after we have completed the voting on Mr. KK Fong's 10 motions, all right, after Fernando Cheung's 7 motions, it will be your turn. So it will be your turn after 17 motions have been voted on.
現在開始表決。
Voting begins. And before I declare the result, please verify your votes. Voting is closed, and the result will be displayed. 14 for, 29 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Ip Kwok Him. I request that in accordance with Rule 49.4, concerning the voting to be cast on the same paper, the bell will ring for 1 minute before the voting will start. Mr. Ip Kwok Him.
So Mr. Ip Kwok Him proposes to shorten the division bell to 1 minute. Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Albert Chen. I think this is inappropriate. We do have this sacred duty to consider each and every motion carefully. When we considered the funding application for XRL, I proposed a lot of motions. Looking back, many of the motions were related to the mistakes and delays of the XRL. You look at the wording of my motions. For instance, the design was done in a rash manner, and there was insufficient information, and also pointed out that the tendering process was done too quickly, and therefore the poor design also caused cost escalation. I mentioned that in all my motions, but they were not read by members at all. Pro-establishment members are cardboard legislators. So long as the baton of the Chinese liaison office asks them to move this way and that, they will do as directed. For instance, some members are so used to pressing the no button when there is a slight change in the motion itself. They don't even know how to vote. Yes, they might have covered the yes and the abstention button. I think such mistakes should not have taken place at all. So each and every motion related to the 3 landfills and the IMWF is important because it's about how public money is used and how the people living near these facilities are going to be subject to adverse environmental impacts, be it Tuen Mun or Zhang Guan O, all residents are affected. So they don't read the motions carefully and mechanically. That is with no humane consideration. They say no to these motions. So I will continue to very actively oppose the irresponsible behavior of pro-establishment members who have overlooked their very sacred duty to consider such matter seriously. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, of course, I am against shortening the duration of the division bell. We do this sometimes in electrical sitting because the amendments or motions were always sent to members well beforehand. But this time is different. We may even have we haven't seen the motions before unless we are willing to close our eyes and our ears and mechanically say no to all motions. 1 minute per motion. That means we won't even have time to visit the washroom. Of course, you can say that you can refrain from voting at all, but if they're eager to come back, they may slip on the way they rush back to the chamber, and please don't blame us for that. And for the sitting, the last sitting, they agreed that it should be shortened to 1 minute, but then when it was time to vote, they couldn't come back in time, and they waited for everyone to be back. Of course, this technical problem may not exist in the FC because the quorum threshold is lower. But we are using motions under 37A to express very important messages. And if you choose to be blind and deaf to such motions and veto them mechanically, then you are not doing justice to the whole system. If you think that you can do it this way, you may as well shorten the bell to 15 seconds or 10 seconds. I oppose Mr. Ip's motion. Does any member wish to speak? If not, I put this item to the vote. Mr. Ip called him in accordance with ROP 47.4 moves in the event that we will vote on motions related to items 31 to 34A. The division bell will ring for 1 minute before members proceed to vote. For those in favor, hands up, please. All right, it's division call, and the bell will ring for 5 minutes.
現在開始表決。
Voting begins.
喺我宣布
Before I announce the results, please check your votes. Voting is now closed. I will display the results. Results 26 for. Mrs. Regina Ip, are you saying that you want to vote for it? So if your vote is a yes, then it's 27 for, 11 against. The motion is passed. May I remind members, when dealing with motions related to paper 32A, 33, and 34A, the division bell will still ring for 5 minutes. The voting result doesn't apply to motions related to paper 32 to 34A. And as regards paper number 31A, we are talking about the Southeast New Territories landfill extension. After we have dealt with all the motions related to paper 31A, we'll deal with paper 31A before we move on to vote on motions related to the remaining papers. We'll now deal with Mr. KK Fung's second motion. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. Mr. KK Fung, please read out your motion. In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, I move the following motion. That the Council is of the view that before passing the SE anti-landfill extension, it must learn from the leakage incident of the Northeast anti-landfill and reassess the leachate layer of the sand first to see whether it is capable of dealing with rainstorms and other contingency situation of the weather. So, and to have a contingency plan for dealing with leachate leakage. Voting begins. Before I announce the results, will members please check their votes? Voting is closed. I display the result. Voting results 9 for, 25 against. The motion is negative. Mr. KK Fung, please move your third motion. In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, I move the following motion in relation to paper FCR 2014-15-31A, that this committee urges the administration to clearly set out the calculation of saturation day of this landfill and reveal how come, although in 2011, 2013 it was projected that sand would be saturated. However, the landfill has been, the lifespan of the landfill has been extended. And the administration must clarify whether it is exaggerating this crisis to create public pressure on the committee to pass the funding application. Voting begins. Before I announce the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. I display the results now. Voting result 10 for, 23 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. KK Fung, the division bell will ring for 1 minute. Do I have to read it out? In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, and I move the following motion to FCR 2014-15-31A. That this committee is of the view that before passing the Ascent Landfill Extension Program, the administration must provide the how it has come to the projection that the landfill has 6 more years to operate, and tell us how the estimate on the volume of waste has arrived at. Voting begins. Before I announce the results, members, please check your votes. Voting is closed. The result is displayed. Voting result, 9 for, 20 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Kikifung? The next, all right. In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, I now move the following motion to FCR 2014-15-31A. That this committee is of the view that before the government approves the Centre Landfill Extension Plan, must clearly state how and to state that in the 6 years after the extension, it would conduct a wide public consultation exercise on the operation of a landfill, and to come to an agreement with the community with a view to closing the landfill forever. Voting begins. Before I announce the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Voting result, 9 for, 19 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Kikifung. In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, I move the following motion to FCR 2014-15-31A. That this committee is of the view that in asking for the Centre Landfill Extension Plan to be passed, the administration should carefully assess the health impact on the community in the transportation of waste, including the possible dust and RSP caused by vehicles transporting waste to the landfill. Voting begins. Before I declare the results, members, please check your votes. Voting is closed, and I'll display the results. Voting result, 10 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Kikifung. In accordance with FC Procedure 37A, I move the following motion to paper FCR 2014-15-31A. That is, Council is of the view that in seeking to pass the Centre Landfill Extension Program, the administration must ensure that no hazardous waste material will be transported by land, and to avoid dealing with such hazardous waste within the boundary of within the landfill, which is near to residential developments.
Voting
begins. Before I declare the result, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 9 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Frederick Fung. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion on paper FCR 2014-15-31A that the Council is of the view that before the government asks the FC to pass the funding application for Sand landfill extension, it should ensure that all RCVs transporting construction waste to the landfill via land should be fitted with a metal gate cover to avoid or to reduce the impact of ashes and RSPs to the residents nearby. Voting begins. Before I declare the results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 9 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Frederick Funk. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion on paper FCR 2014-15-31A. The Council is of the view that before the government asks the FC to pass a funding application for Sand landfill extension, it should impose a restriction on the timing of using land transport to take materials or waste to the landfills, and restriction should be placed on vehicles construction waste to the landfill on Saturdays, Sundays, and mornings and evenings of the weekdays. Voting begins. Before I declare the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Display of results. 8 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Frederick Funk. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion in relation to paper FCR 2014-15-31A. That this Council is of the view that before the government asks the FC to pass the funding application for Sand landfill extension, it should reduce the number of trees proposed to be felled, which totals 10,380, and that more trees should be transplanted, and the felled trees should be recycled for further use. Dr. Fernando Zhang, it will be you who will move the next one to move the motions. Voting begins. Before I declare the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Display of results. 8 for, 70 against. I declare the motion negative. Dr. Fernando Zhang. First, Chairman. In accordance with paragraph 5 of paper FCR 2014-15-31A, the government has set the goal to reduce per capita municipal solid waste, that it should be reduced by 40% by 2022. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that the government should submit a concrete implementation and financial plan in relation to cutting by 40% the per capita MSW reduction rate by 40% before it can proceed with the Ascent Landfill Extension Plan.
Voting
begins. Before I declare the results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 7 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negatived. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Paragraph 8 of the paper FCR 2014-1531A, it is mentioned that community residents are concerned about odor problem. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that this FC asks that the government, before proceeding with the Ascent Landfill Extension Plan, consult those affected and the community residents on the odor problem.
Voting
begins. Before I declare the results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 7 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negatived. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Paragraph 26 of the paper, FCR 2014-1531A, the administration estimates that 7,450 tons of construction waste will be created. 5,700 tons, 75%, will be recycled at the construction sites. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that the FC urges that the administration require the contractors to set clear goals in their proposals and undertake that 75% of the inert construction waste will be reused on site before it proceeds with the Ascent Landfill Extension project.
Voting
begins. Before I declare the results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 8 for, 15 against. I declare the motion negative. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Paragraph 33 of the FC paper FCR 2014-1531A, the administration estimates that 351 new posts will be created for the post. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that this FC urges the government to ensure that for 164DR project, priority should be given to employing local workers to ensure that this project can create jobs within the construction industry. Voting begins. Before I declare the results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results 9 for, 15 against. I declare the motion negatived. Dr. Fernando Zhang. According to 2011 statistics, every day 55,516 tons of construction waste is being produced daily, amounting to 22 million tons each year. And the figure is staggering. And because the public feel costs are low, the problem is aggravated. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that this FC urges the government to provide statistics on the construction waste produced by infrastructure projects in the past years, and also make open the waste reduction targets, and also submit concrete plans on how to encourage and regulate contractors in cutting down on construction waste before it proceeds with the sand landfill extension plan. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Display of results. 7 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negative. Dr. Fernando Cheung. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move that the size of the sand landfill extension be reduced, and also implement recycling policies and review the effectiveness of such policies after 3 years. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of results. 8 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negatived. Dr. Fernando Cheung. In accordance with paragraph 17 of the FC paper FCR 2014-15-13A, the government has consulted community residents and will continue to liaise with community residents. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I moved that the FC urges the government to give us a plan, a concrete plan on how to further liaise with residents around the sand landfill area and the resources to be provided before it proceeds with the sand landfill extension plan. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, you will be the next one to move the motions. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of voting results. 8 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negatived. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion that the committee urges the government to withdraw the funding application of FCR 2014-15-30 on A before it conducts a review on the effectiveness of this tri-color recycling bin initiative. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Voting results displayed. 8 for, 18 against. I declare the motion negatived. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion. that this FC urges that the government, before it reviews the effectiveness of the food waste recycling policy, should withdraw the funding application of FCR 2014-15-31A.
現在開始表決。
Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your vote. Voting is closed. Display of voting results. 8 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion: that the committee urges that before the government can guarantee that the export recycling volume does not include imported waste, then before it does so, it should withdraw the funding application under FCR 2014-15-31A. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Display of voting results. 8 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. In accordance with FC Procedure Rule 37A, I move the following motion: that this committee urges that the government, before the government can ensure that the exporters can make a truthful declaration of export of waste in relation to their work procedures and filling out of the export forms, then it should withdraw the funding application under FCR 2014-15-31A. Voting begins. Before I declare the voting results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Display of voting results. 8 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negative. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. In accordance with FC Procedure Rules 37A, I move the following motion: that the Finance Committee urges that the government, before introducing a certification system for recyclers and waste exporters and implementing such a system, withdraw the funding application in FCR 2014-15-31A.
Voting begins. Before I declare the results, Please check your votes. Voting is now closed and the results are displayed. 8 for, 17 against. I declare the motion negatived. Let's take a break of 10 minutes and then we'll resume at 5:10.